What's going on, guys? Abrasus here. Today I have something different for you. Once a year there is a Masters tournament in Poland, which is for two people teams. So I've heard that there are some kinds of tournaments, this kind of tournaments as well in other countries. And I think it's very interesting how crazy lists you can build here. So the basic rule set is you have two different armies. In our case, one is slightly bigger. I think this year this is 3.2k plus 2k army. Both you can bring the same army. The allied army is not treated as friendly nor enemy, so basically you cannot use any abilities of the other army. So most interesting effects that can stack are debuffs. You cannot also use any universal spells. There are some crazy things like the fanatics, the madgits that cannot get through the allied army, which is pretty strange. But yeah, I think there are few rules interactions like this, but not so many. So this limits a bit the capabilities to make weird combos. So I think it's good, but it makes the tournament a bit less interesting. Now, and the third most important thing is that the magic phase is shared. So you generate the Veil tokens at the same time and you cast the spells from one pool. So there is no separate magic phases. So what kind of lists to bring? You can go either very offensive or very defensive or balanced. But I think that between offensive and defensive, offensive seems a bit better for this kind of tournament, since there are more points on the table, and it's much harder for the defensive army to get the points, to focus enough units, because there are so many units that you need to kill, and the scenarios are really much harder in those kind of tournaments, if you are not pushing your opponent. So here is the table of a few things that I want you to take in mind when building lists for such tournaments and choosing the armies especially. So first column is what kind of magic this army brings. I think often the best combos will come when one army is having a strong magic phase generally, and the second army is known for the weak magic phase. So if you take an army with the stronger magic phase, like not necessarily strong here means strong in general, but strong for the doubles. So for example, Vampire Covenant's magic is not weak, the same as Vermin Swarms, but for the doubles it's not necessarily the best. So why should you bring armies that are strong with armies that are weak? Simply because you want the armies mostly to cover each other's weaknesses. So there is no need to pick two armies that have strong magic phase, because you will most likely be overpaying the points. Then I have a general column here about the weaknesses of every army. I will not read all of them. You can you can just read them, pause the video here if you want. Then there are things that work for both armies, and there are some that I would like to point out. I think the hereditary spell from the Dread Elves is very interesting, because it allows for the rerolls to wound to work for both armies, since it's not specified that friendly units get rerolls to wound. But generally, the rerolls to wound against target unit must be rerolled, so it certainly works. Then you have dwarves with Hewn on the Mountains. I think dwarves are generally pretty interesting here, especially as the smaller army, because they increase the casting values for the opponents by 1, and at the same time dwarves have lots of weaknesses, like the magic phase is really bad. Then they are very slow, so you can basically fit an army or just fit them to the second army as a very good help. Then you have things like Storm Clarion, also very interesting thing, very helpful. Then the Frost Mammoth. I think the Frost Mammoth is really exceptional thing. Because it helps other armies with low initiative. Then Orcs and Goblins Hereditary, which works very similarly to Dread Elves Hereditary, also worth pointing out. Madgits and Natural Wrecking Teams, as I mentioned already, the Madgits and Natural Wrecking Teams have in their rules that they can go through friendly or enemy units. So basically they have to stop within 1 inch of the ally. I don't think it has that much of uses, but I haven't explored it very deeply. So maybe you can find something interesting. Like things that can come to mind is blocking the Madgits from running in weird directions, and then disincentivizing your opponent to make charges against certain units by releasing Madgits in front of them. Okay, then Sylvan Elves. I think Sylvan Elves are generally pretty bad here, especially because Sylvan Elves forests actually work, make it dangerous terrain for everyone without Forest Rider and such. So your ally will be affected. Okay, Cascade of Fatep. I think very interesting thing. Not necessarily work for both armies, but I think it could be one of the strongest units in this format. Because in smaller armies, I wouldn't expect people to bring BSB. They should just try to work around it and get things that are pretty much immune to psychology. So Cascade, and with -1 to casting within 20 to 36 inches, I think one of the best things in this format. Lightning Rod, similar role to Storm Clarion. And Court of the Damned and Stormcaller, both very interesting vampires abilities, both working for both armies. So Stormcaller actually gives hard target within 12 inch to everybody, so also your enemies, but with vampires it's not really an issue. So what I would do at this tournament is I would take a big army, which I want to take. And here are the things I would consider seriously to take. Everything except the yellow ones. I think the yellow ones are pretty not suitable for this tournament. Ogres, I think, are suitable, but I probably wouldn't pick them because of personal reasons. And beasts probably as well, not really my style. But I think from all the armies left white, you could pick something. And then I would try to seek for the niche to fill for the second army. So the Beast Hearts have excellent scoring units, and they should fill in that. The Demon Legions, immune to psychology. So there is as a small army, very good thing to have. Dwarven Halls, the Human on the Mountains, Highborn Elves, the Frost Phoenix actually might be interesting here, since the -3 initiative is not really worth much for the Highborn Elves itself, but for other armies it might be worth it. Kingdom of Aquitaine, excellent scoring units, and some armies lack the Peg Load, or generally the Killy Load. Here you have a very interesting Killy Load. Orcs and Goblins, Madgits, and Feral Cavalry. I presented the full cavalry list from Orcs and Goblins last week, and I think that you can learn something from it, and I will show you a list in a second that uses that. Then Undying Dynasties and Vampire Covenants are not really things that you should think of when picking the niche, because they can only be used, in my opinion, as big armies, because they are very dependent on magic, and you should cover that. Vermin Swarm, yeah, no armor safe shooting, probably the best thing to say about them. Warriors of the Dark Gods, again, immune to psychology on most army and very decent scorings. So in the last column you will find armies that I would take as an ally for the big army on the left. So for the big Beast Hearts, I would recommend something like Vermin Swarms and Warriors of the Dark Gods, for the reasons mentioned mentioned a bit earlier. Just those are the armies that I would expect to cover the weaknesses of the big army the best. So I have three lists to showcase to show you how you could approach building lists for the masters. Big ogre clans plus smaller orcs and goblins. So the idea is we go for a very pushy list with decent amount of chaff, and then we utilize the Frost Mammoth for the -3 initiative, because both ogre clans and orcs and goblins lack the initiative very much. So the double mammoth is there because I want to avoid the case when one of the mammoths is killed, and then it is an uphill battle from there. So the base for the ogre clans is double big block. As you can see, there is no BSB, but there is double banner of discipline. And for the orcs and goblins, you have 3 units of 3 mounted units, decent amount of chaff, and then the feral orc warlord. He is pretty risky. He is only 3 up armor save, 5 up ward save, but with potion of swiftness and frost mammoth, he could even strike at initiative 10, and he has a lot of things going on for him. So I think this can threaten your enemy in a very significant way. The Scrappling Trappers are there just to annoy the opponent and set the traps. You can probably just switch them for the third Saber-Tooth Tiger. So I think the idea of what to do here is pretty clear. You have you have pretty decent magic, I would say, with if you want even triple -1 to hit and dangerous terrains from Shamanism. You have the Master of Shamanism and then two apprentices. One of them most likely needs to take the Goblin Hereditary, which combos really well with both tribesmen, mercs, and all the orc units. So another idea is Big Demon Legions plus Small Kingdom of Aquitaine. This is basically the leftovers from the idea when the format was supposed to be 4,000 plus 2,000. Here I think that the loss of Demon Engine, because you cannot fit the Demon Engine with the Weaver of Change, is pretty crucial, because you have no place to hide your Weaver behind. So that might be lacking. But generally, it utilizes the Kingdom of Aquitaine as the answer to the problem of the Demon Legions, which is scoring. And then you have pretty much the usual stuff. The Mounted Sirens, one of the best units in the game generally. So the Crow could probably do something good around here. And then the last thing, the King of all armies, Undying Dynasties. Covered with a bit of armor, anti-armor help in the Vermin Swarms. I think that the amount of units in the Undying Dynasties is ridiculous. I've chosen Evocation here as the lore, but probably you can also go with Divination, although only 18-inch range seems a bit lacking. There is a Casket, there is double Colossi, one with Great Weapon, one with Wasp and Bow, and 8 Sharpty Archers as a very excellent unit. With Vermin Swarms, I wanted to go for something that is immune to psychology, basically. So hence the Pendulum, Adepted Pendulum. I think Occultism Adept with the ability to choose any lore, any spell from the lore is very interesting. And then the Dreadmill, again, very good unit. Plague Catapult and Plague Disciples, a bit more answer to the armor, and Rat Swarms as the only chaff that doesn't require any leadership at all. So hope you guys enjoyed the video and hope you learned something. The Masters are taking place next week. I hope you will be prepared by then. I think the list deadline should be somewhere in the next week. Hope you learned something from the video that could help you build your lists or generally suit them for the tournament. And see you in the next video. Cheers!